we said goodbye to the beloved terms LSP and TMS, language service providers and translation management systems, and we introduced language solutions integrators, LSIs, and language technology platforms. Hey everyone, and welcome to this very, very special episode of SlaterPod. Today with our very own Head of Research, Anna Wyndham, Head of Advisory, Esther Bond, and Senior Research Analyst, Alex Edwards. Hi everyone.
Hey.
Hi.
Hi everyone.
All right, we've put this together because we want to talk to you about one of the elements from our recent market report, the Slater 2025 Language Industry Market Report. One of the elements that caused a lot of feedback, caused quite the stir, triggered a ton of discussions at our recent SlaterCon in London, which we held a couple of weeks ago, right now, Esther? It's been a couple of weeks?
Nearly 2 weeks, yeah.
Nearly 2 weeks, all right.
And we're still feeling the effects.
we are still feeling the effects. So yeah, that one of the aspects that triggered a lot of discussion was that we said goodbye to the beloved terms LSP and TMS, language service providers and translation management systems, and we introduced a new terminology, and we're calling the vendor landscape now, the kind of the very top level categorization would be language solutions integrators, LSIs, and language technology platforms. I mean, there's a ton more in the report, but this is one of the aspects that really triggered a ton of discussion. So, but first, Esther, how was SlaterCon London? Give those very few people who did not attend a quick overview.
Yeah, well, I think not the entire language industry participants from London were there, but it felt like it at times. I mean, we had a really great turnout, 200 people plus in the room, in the conference at Nobu. So they had a fantastic time. Great content, really good speakers. I mean, we had the CEOs of 2 super agencies, had Ben from RWS speaking, and also Bertrand from Accolade. Some great presentations on the buyer side also. So it was a really fascinating presentation, discussion from Wise, highlighting some of the challenges, on the buyer side still, that obviously localization language generally is not a solved problem. Yeah, really great time. Lots of good networking, lots of discussions. Lots to sort of digest and think about afterwards, I think, not least what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. And Alex and Anna, you also moderated a panel, right? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I moderated the panel on language AI startups. So we spoke to Synapse and Olang.
Alex, you also did moderate a quick panel, or a panel.
Yeah, so we spoke with Clémentine Larnay from RS Group. RS Group is essentially a industrial company that do lots of documentation in the industrial industry. And she was talking to us about centralizing localization, how to kind of put the focus on showing the real value of having a centralized localization department. So very interesting discussion and insight from her there.
Yeah, and we're going to put the recordings of all of those panels and discussions and presentations onto our website for subscribers only, of course. So and we also had fascinating presentations, and again from Ben from RWS, Bertrand from Accolade. Then we had Wise. We had I moderated a panel with Phrase, and we had Sylvia moderating a panel with AppTech on kind of a very niche topic in AI dubbing, prosody. Anyway, great. So this was a great conference. We're heading to San Francisco, to Menlo Park rather, in September. So make sure you don't miss that. All right. So now let's jump into again that topic that really triggered a ton of discussion, namely the saying goodbye to our beloved language service provider term and to the beloved translation management systems term, LSP and TMS, and introducing you to language solutions integrators and language technology platforms. So, Anna, give us the kind of highlight differentiation here. What is a language solution integrator? What is a language tech platform? And then, we're going to take it from there by narrowing it down and explaining people why we did this rebranding, as it were, what triggered it, and talk a bit about some of the pushback and the support we received on it.
Sure. So on the one hand, we have language technology platforms, the acronym LTP. And these are pure play technology providers. So we're talking about language tools, applications, orchestration platforms, and AI models. And what they enable is the conversion of speech and text between languages. They might enable the conversion of speech to text and text to speech, or they enable the generation of original text or original multilingual video content. So basically, these are pure technology. And then on the other hand, we have language solutions integrators. And these are companies that utilize technology and utilize language AI and integrate that and action it on behalf of buyers to deliver managed language outcomes. So they blend human expertise and technology to deliver outcomes to buyers that are fit for purpose. So they basically they take the buyer all the way through to getting the multilingual content that they want at the end, rather than with the language technology platforms, the buyers have the option to kind of use that technology as a kind of self-serve or as they need to.
Let's first start, before we go into kind of the details and some of the differentiation here, there's various aspects to explore. But first, what was the reasoning behind defining those two new categories? And just another caveat, this is just one part of a much broader redefining of the industry that we did in the 2025 market report, but it was just one of the aspects that really triggered a lot of discussions. That's why we want to go through it today. But first, what was the reasoning behind defining these two new categories?
The main reason is the significant AI and technology advancements that we've seen over the past couple of years. And this has really transformed both sides of our industry. On the one hand, it's transformed what buyers are bringing to market, what their offerings are. And on the other hand, it's transformed what buyers can use language solutions and language technology to do in order to achieve their business outcomes. So if we look at the industry, look back a couple of years ago and think about those terms that were so meaningful to us not very long ago, like translation management systems or machine translation providers or language service providers. We've got machine translation providers have now almost all of them expanded to kind of a broader outlook, offering speech to text, text to speech, text generation. So they have a much broader language AI offering. We've got translation management systems that we know have undergone huge transformation over the couple of years, injecting all of these different AI capabilities and also expanding their focus, not just from converting text from one language to another, but text generation, lots of other different capabilities as well. And language service providers have also changed significantly. So they're not really providing just human services. They're really going to buyers with a full solutions offering, providing options for integrating all of these different language AI capabilities, integrating all of this different technology, and blending that with linguistic expertise and human expertise to deliver solutions. So everything has changed, and we wanted to take a fresh look and come up with new terms that really reflect the reality today.
I want to make it also quite kind of practical. So Alex, you've been working on AI dubbing quite a bit recently, right? And I mean, if you reached out to some of these companies, some of them were started, a year or two ago, and you kind of said, hey, you are a translation management system, probably feedback would have been very hard. So what's your initial feel about like having this kind of new category and talking to these, fast growing young startups?
Yeah, exactly. Spoken with quite a lot of AI dubbing startups recently, and of course, they do offer language solutions in the market. They're not categorized as LSPs, essentially because they just provide, they provide AI dubbing solutions that are fully self-service. So anyone can go and grab or, dub training videos or marketing videos on a website. And that's, of course, the conversion of one language to another. So there are many of these companies out there now, and that's, how they fit into the LTP category.
And Esther, you're working on the advisory side, of course. Have you started using the new terms as well, and have you had some initial kind of inbound feedback so far?
Yes, we have started using the terms. I mean, I think obviously not so much in existing materials, but yeah, communication around what it is that, you know, a seller does. We're starting to adopt the term language solutions integrator or language technology platform, just as a high level description. And yes, I think, you know, people have taken notice, which is great, that they're paying attention and reading my emails in the first place. But yeah, so I mean, we had a couple of questions just coming back, like fairly basic. What is a language solutions integrator versus an LSP, for example? And then another question that came back was, are all LSPs now LSIs? Or do they have to sort of implement some sort of AI or tech to actually be classified as an LSI now?
Good question. So the first one we're trying to explore throughout this podcast, and the second one is, I think all of the ones that we previously referred to as LSPs are now LSIs, because even if you go to the very boutique level, there's very few, like, let's call them legacy LSPs that would still use just like one tool. Like they kind of all integrate all kinds of tools, even if they're very small. So the answer there would be yes. And also from a broader point of view, generally we felt that the industry, the existing industry, and also the new one kind of selling, they sell themselves or itself short by calling, large companies that integrate a ton of tech and AI, and small companies as well, I guess LSPs. Like we needed a new way to talk to the investment community as well, because the investment community looks at this and says, well, what do you mean a service provider? So what type of service? Okay, a particular set of multiples, like valuation multiples applies to service providers. Where's the tag? Oh, you have a bit of tag, but so on and so forth. So we also needed a new framework for the investment community, and I think this is helping in trying to achieve that.
I do remember, even if you going back sort of 3-4 years, there were people on the investment side sort of starting to talk about LSTP, language, to really highlight the fact that it was a language, services, and technology provider. So just to sort of hammer home that point that you're making, I think it's important to, in the way that the outside community or people who are interested but are not part of the language industry yet, to also understand how it's operating and the value that it's bringing.
If you survive the next 2 to 3 years and you figure out a way to integrate these latest and greatest AI models that are now accessible very easily, and you build a integrated solution for a client and the client says, well, this is what I need, sure, I could go direct to all these foundational AI infrastructure players and try to build this myself, but hey, I really need you. Then you've built a business that's very, very future-proof. Future-proof, but also, hopefully quite profitable. So I think it's a rebranding that was more than necessary. Let's go a little bit more into the weeds, Anna. So do these LTPs, now we're talking about the language technology platforms, moving away from the LSIs for a second, do these LTPs include platforms that enable human delivery, or is it all just AI automated delivery?
So the LTPs include platforms that enable human-led delivery, as well as expert-in-the-loop delivery. So hybrid AI humans, or humans editing or adapting or interacting dynamically with AI output, as well as fully automated. So I guess a good example would be what we used to call RSI platforms, which enable human interpreting and still enable human interpreting. And another example would be platforms or tools that enable dubbing workflows, for example. But an important point is that many of these platforms that were originally designed to enable human-led language delivery are now integrating these AI-only and expert-in-the-loop capabilities. I think a really good example is in the interpreting space, you've got companies like Interprefy and Kudo, who now have, as well as enabling RSI, or simultaneous interpreting by human interpreters, are also providing these AI live speech translation and AI captioning capabilities all in the one platform. So yeah, this category encompasses all of those different types of delivery, but it's kind of important to note, or it's an important trend that we're seeing, obviously, that there's this evolution towards including and incorporating AI, as well as the fact that many segments are seeing AI first companies popping up. So you're seeing AI dubbing only platforms popping up, or AI captions, or AI speech translation. So we have this market that's a bit of a mix of these AI first only companies and these evolving established companies as well.
Speaking of AI, like why didn't we use the term AI in these two categories? Like, I don't know. We'll maybe talk about it later, but maybe first, can you maybe share some of the internal dialogue? Like, why didn't we call them like language AI companies or something like that?
There's a strong argument for it, and the argument being that almost all language technology platforms are either based on AI, have that centered in their offering, have integrated AI capabilities, or that most probably plan to do so. So this is a kind of a key characteristic of a language technology platform, that it incorporates language AI. But I think the discussion that we had internally was about whether or not this would remain a salient term. And I think it relates to the fact that AI is such a broad technology transformation that is kind of ubiquitous, not just in our industry, but everywhere. And if we think of it kind of as, I don't know, a new source of like a source of energy or some other huge resource that applies very broadly, we have to think about whether that term is going to be meaningful, or whether it's just going to be, we're going to take it for granted that AI is injected in everything.
Yeah, it's interesting as well at SlateCon because you speak to the LSIs, the language solutions integrators, and they are very much, focused on the human expert in the loop element, and they are saying that, AI is just a tool. It's just a way for us to get to the end result. It's not necessarily the core focus. So I think, building and not including AI as part of the name is also conducive to that, and just recognizing that AI is part of the stack but not necessarily the full stack or the full solution.
Maybe just to jump in there also, like these LSIs, like they have this expert in the loop component, but it's also very gradual, right? Some of the companies that we would categorize as LSIs are like really heavy on tech. They're really at the outer edge of, sure, they still have some expert in the loop, but they own quite a bit of the AI stack, quite a bit of the tech stack, and they're very heavy on the tech integration. Then, of course, if you go more towards the kind of the expert, the boutiques, etc., they're a bit more on that human element side. But going back to the AI point, so I mean, just want to add to what Anna said. So maybe there could be an argument to include it. Totally agree. But it may also become, maybe AI might become in the next 4 to 5 years something like cloud, right? So it's something that's like, well, obviously it's in the cloud, like it's like cloud software, right? I mean, like very few people still have something pre-installed, especially any kind of, maybe if you're not part of a giant company, most of your cloud-based. So like calling something cloud was really cool 15 years ago, and now it's really not cool anymore because it's kind of a given. Or, I mean, think about the term CAT. Those who remember CAT tools, computer-aided translation. Well, like everything's computer-aided. Like everything, car driving is computer aided. So why have this term, right? So if everything will be AI, it kind of makes sense to have something that doesn't include the term AI. And also language AI is very broad. I mean, these are large language models. They can do all kinds of other things. So yeah, we decided to not have it. And so far, actually, I'm pleasantly surprised by how few questions we've had about not calling it AI and not putting it in there. Now let's go to AI and talk about big tech and LLM builders. So like, are we in, we have in the market report kind of a new market size, new definition of the market. Are we including these big tech companies, the Googles, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, the LLM builders, the Coheres, all of these companies? Are we including them or not? And if not, why?
This was one of the biggest questions we had to tackle. And I guess the short answer is no, we're not including them in the addressable market. But going into that in a little bit more detail, as you say, so we see them as a foundation to the industry. We're talking about large language model builders like OpenAI, Meta, and so on, as well as cloud platforms, which obviously, say, AWS or Google or so on, are providing speech to text, text to speech, machine translation, and so on. And we also have the data for AI specialists as well. So they're all they're feeding into this layer. And these models and this infrastructure and this data all underpins our industry. So we have language technology platforms that are building on this, fine-tuning the models. We have language solutions integrators doing the same. And in addition, if buyers want to access these capabilities, they can, in theory, and do in some cases, go and use these raw materials to build their own solutions in-house. And in some cases, they may want to go straight to, say, OpenAI, ChatGPT chatbots, and so on. So they play many different roles. They're enablers of the industry. They're also driving the innovation. This is a key point. So that they are some of the key players in terms of what is actually possible in our industry. They also have a key role in shaping pricing expectations and shaping buyer expectations. In addition, to some extent, they are disruptors, or they could be seen, we could see them as competitors, or we could have included them in the market. So why didn't we include them in the market? The first reason is that they don't go to market with a kind of language-centric and language-only offering. Their offering and their business goal is much, much broader. So when we at Sator talk about the total addressable market, we're talking about LTPs and LSIs that have a multilingual and a language focus. This is the main thing that they bring to the market. And the other aspect is that it's very difficult, or almost probably impossible, to really size what revenue these companies are deriving just from their language conversion and language transformation capabilities. So getting an insight into what revenue OpenAI is making just from translation would be pretty much impossible. So any figure that we came up with would kind of distort what we're trying to do, which is to get to a meaningful figure that tells us how much are buyers spending on language technology platforms and language solutions integrators to achieve their business goals.
Yeah.
We think of these foundational AI builders more as kind of an open-ended layer above the market and kind of unsized.
Definitely. And it's a very complex picture, with them being partners, foundations, competitors, like expectation setters, and then completely random aside, like we just saw that OpenAI actually hired their first localization manager or head of localization. So even a company like OpenAI still needs localization. You know that they're a buyer. So presumably
it's gone full circle.
it's coming full circle. So presumably that head of localization will work with LTPs and LSIs. Okay, so we talked a lot about tech. So are we saying LSIs, language solutions integrators, are not tech-centric? Is that what we're saying?
On the contrary, and I think you made this point in the Sator Weekly newsletter from last week. In fact, we're saying the opposite. We're saying that language solutions integrators integrate a huge amount of tech. They are very tech-centric and AI-centric, and they are the ones who bring the technology to buyers in a managed solution format with this. I guess they are, while LTPs are product-led, LSIs are solutions-led, and those solutions are AI and tech-centric.
And we did a survey, Alex. Maybe you can speak to that. Did we get some feedback from that as well on the LSIs, how they work with AI?
The LSI survey we did, we found that 54% of LSIs had actually implemented AI into their business workflows or using AI systematically, which is an interesting data point. And 0%. Another interesting one is that 0% of LSIs reporting having no plans to implement AI. So, this is something that we see as pretty much implemented across the market in different degrees or another.
Esther, when you talk to, potential buyers meaning, investors or
Strategic
bigger
buyers of companies.
groups, strategic buyers that want to acquire an LSI or an LTP, like what are you seeing around the tech component there? Is it a big discussion point, or is it mostly focused on the numbers still?
Well, it depends who you talk to, I have to say. I mean, that's always going to be the case. Depends a little bit. I mean, if you're a language technology platform and you're looking to remain a pure play technology platform, then you're going to be interested in obviously acquiring some form of additional, complementary language technology. If you are a language solutions integrator, you might be a buyer of technology because, there can be a sort of, not mini, but there can be an LTP within an LSI. LSIs can be buyers and may be interested in acquiring some pure technology. And then equally, I think, scale is always, when you're talking more on the solution side, scale continues to be attractive. So, higher revenues always going to appeal up to a point. And then you run out of money.
Let's go to the reactions now. I guess one of the reactions that I got is like, so I can, and also speaking to the LSI being, people having the objection that maybe it implies that LSIs are not tech-centric. Again, on the contrary, extremely tech-centric. That's what we tried to reflect with actually the renaming of it, that technology plays a huge part also in the LSIs. And an LSI, in a Venn diagram, can own a ton of LTP, right? So a solutions integrator can integrate a third-party solution, but it can also own a ton of proprietary technology. And one of the pushbacks that I personally got in a call recently was, hey, look, in the IT world, a system integrator doesn't actually own the tech. But I think that's a little too narrow. I think even in the IT systems integrator world, they can actually own some of the tech. I mean, I go into details here, but like Siemens or Accenture or even IBM, if you think about IBM as systems integrator, they own a lot of their own technology, right? Obviously IBM with like Watson, but Siemens also, or Accenture, they own some of that. And in the language industry, again, the LSIs, think about something like TransPerfect or RWS. I mean, they own, dozens of individual LTP capabilities or kind of standalone products even. So we're not by any stretch of the imagination saying LSIs are low in tech, quite the opposite.
I have a quick question there. So
Sure.
You introduced the term system integrator, which I think is something that we hear, potentially in other industries. Why did we decide not to use the sort of language system integrator and borrow that from a different industry? Is there some thought behind that?
Good question. I think we thought eventually it sounded a bit too technical, too much like that systems integrator concept from the IT world. And we also wanted to distinguish it clearly from the systems integrator term, which was very much kind of occupied and has like a 30-year history, right? Let's quickly go through, maybe name a couple of kind of high growth areas and challenges for the LTPs and some of the opportunities. We can go through this relatively quickly.
Yeah, and in the market report, which we released 2 years ago, you can find a lot of detail about this. We lay out all the different types of LTPs, what the established high growth and niche areas are. Just quickly, translation and localization being it's the largest of the LTP segments and the most established. And then we've got high growth LTPs, which are focused on dubbing, voice and narration for audio. So we're thinking about companies like ElevenLabs. We also see captions for video and audio transcription as reasonably established with sustained growth. And also with high growth is this multilingual text generation LTP. Yeah. And so companies that enable text generation in multiple languages. We've got Jasper, Copy AI, and Typeface. And another important point, of course, is that a lot of LTPs are integrating multiple of these language capabilities. So we see a lot of LTPs that were originally focused on translation, now adding in text generation, now adding in speech-to-speech translation, and so on. So yeah, I'd point you to the report. We do a bit of a deep dive into some of those and talk about what some of the dynamics are in terms of which of those segments are getting the most investment attention, which ones have slowed down a little bit, and that convergence trend.
So on the LTP side, yeah, it is positive, but maybe there's also some kind of real world movements that paint a bit more of a nuanced picture, that like the disruptors are getting disrupted or struggling as well. I think we have a couple of examples there.
The market for LTPs is highly competitive, really fast evolving. And as mentioned, there's this mix of newcomers, so AI first newcomers that are building on top of LLMs really quickly, and established and evolving LTPs that might have started maybe in dubbing and are moving into AI video generation, or maybe started in captioning and are moving into text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and kind of honing their offerings around solving particular buyer problems. So it might be media localization, it might be accessibility, it might be everything relating to voice and helping companies to unlock their text content as voice content and so on. And we did it's a reasonably small survey, but still directionally interesting. And every LTP that we spoke to across a wide range of these segments was extremely positive. The vast majority reported that they grew significantly, more than 25% in the previous year, and 100% expected high growth over the next year. So there's kind of signals about how much the segment is growing. And we also see investment going in particularly towards the speech related, so audio narration, dubbing, and so on. But yeah, as you said, Florian, there's kind of mixed signals as well. We saw, for example, Papercup, which was one of the earliest players in this text-to-speech space. They got in before the kind of LLM revolution and helping companies to unlock text content as speech and AI dubbing, and had gained significant traction with major clients. Really well-developed proprietary technology, AI models. But we saw them recently, I'm not sure if it was formally an acquisition or they joined up.
It's an acqui-hire.
They joined up with Scale AI. So that suggests that it's interesting that a company with such refined and kind of leading technology and clients decided to make that move. And I think we saw another interesting move, which was Toby, which is an AI live speech translation company. They started in that space, got traction with great clients, Toyota, Panasonic, and so on, but have started to speak recently about maybe pivoting to adjacent spaces. So it's a fast-moving market, lots of opportunity, but not necessarily easy to establish yourself as a leader there.
Alex, when you speak to these AI dubbing companies, is it mostly raw, or do they also tell you a bit more about, like, okay, now we have this great idea, we have this great tech, but like we're sometimes struggling a little bit as well?
It's interesting because there's a lot of opportunity out there in different market segments. Obviously, there's new market segments now with creators, influencers that potentially want to, localize their content to other markets. You also have existing markets such as media localization, which may be experimenting with media and AI dubbing. I think going back to the challenges of that, one interesting point is the whole IP of using voices. If you're using a library voice, or if you're cloning someone else's voice, you have to ensure you get the legal clearances to do that. To edit the videos and to edit the audios, you have new challenges coming in with using AI, and ensuring you have that compliance and that approval from everyone involved, that you have the rights to actually edit the content and publish it in another language using AI as well. So there are a lot of opportunities, but also some new challenges that are being brought up by using AI.
Yeah, and it is our second biggest language capability bracket, right? Anna, you said before, translate it being dubbing. I mean, translation localization number 1, dubbing number 2, voice narration audio number 3, captions for voice for video number 4. Yeah, much more in the report. Go check it out. But it's it's a super complicated picture in this. I think it is extremely well kind of framed in the market report, but it's hard to get this across in a video podcast. So go check out the report. Final question. LSIs. What's the opportunity for LSIs? Language Solutions Integrators. Remember that, Language Solutions Integrators. What's the opportunity for LSIs right now, Anna?
So I think one of the key points is that the majority of buyer spend on language solutions and technology still goes towards the LSI. So they make up an 87% share of the total addressable market. And so, of course, their positioning is that they're providing the right mix of AI, expert linguists, integration paths, and they are assuring those kind of language outcomes, getting the output to fit what the client and the buyer needs that language output to achieve. Expert in the Loop, obviously, is a strategic sweet spot. In the market report, we present the results of a survey of 209 language solutions integrators. So go and check it out. There's a lot of detail. But one of the data points that came out of that is that 84% of LSIs report demand for expert review of AI output. So buyers are going to LSIs and saying, do you have an expert human being who can review this output for us? Of course, there's this, we talked about the AI maturity among LSIs. Alex already mentioned the data point, but we're seeing a widening performance gap with obviously the larger, unsurprisingly, but the larger LSIs really outpacing the smaller segments. And we do see that AI maturity, not just offering it, but embedding it in solutions, is a strong predictor of performance and growth as well. I think you've spoken on the podcast recently about this, the new trend or the emergence of more LTP LSI partnerships.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more partnerships emerging, and so there's a huge opportunity here on both sides for LSIs to take advantage of the technology, and for LTPs to find clients and partners in LSIs. And we go into that in the report and provide some examples of that. There's just some of the key themes that came out of the survey in terms of the LSI opportunity.
Awesome. Well, this was helpful, hopefully not just for the audience, but also for us internally to make sure that we get those terms right on our side. Language solutions integrators, language technology platforms. You'll hear a lot more about it in the coming weeks, months, and years. And go get the report. Go subscribe to Slator. If you get a pro subscription or enterprise, you actually get the report as part of the package. Actually, even growth as well. Our mid-tier offering includes the market report. And otherwise, just go and get it as the individual report. Cool. All right. Anna, Esther, and Alex, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Florian.
Thank you.
Martin.